podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome to the 1905 podcast. Each week, Joe and I bring you our unfiltered takes on the highs, the lows, and everything in between, following the Blues from Gate 13 of the Matthew Harding stand. Let's hit the notes.
The final score at Wembley: Chelsea 1, Leeds United 0, and Chelsea basked in the sunshine. It was a very good performance from the Blues, much better than their previous outings, I have to say, and we finally scored a goal. I have to say, I wasn't completely sold on the starting 11, but I think at the moment needs must a little bit. There is a few injuries and ailments sort of going around the squad, so I think you have to kind of just go with what you have, and Chelsea did that today. And to be fair, I thought that for the most part, each and every player contributed to the victory today in some way, shape or form. And I've got to say, I think I will give a big nod to Robert Sanchez today for a fantastic performance. Even though he didn't have loads to do, he still had to make two point-blank saves from Leeds United, and he did that fantastically well. The first one when Tosin and Caicedo basically run into each other and cause calamity in their own box once again, and he has to save down low to his right-hand side while sticking his leg out, and it was a really good save. And then in the second half, actually there was two. There was one from a header which he had to make a good save from, and then there was a shot just outside the box which was ripping into the top corner, and Sanchez dived high to his right and managed to turn it over the bar. Well, yeah, that was probably about all Leeds did for the entirety of the game, if I'm honest with you, because Chelsea did play well today. They did restrict them to few and far between chances, and yeah, I think he deserves a bit of credit for what he did for keeping us in the game. But Chelsea could have had a hatful themselves. They really played well in the first half. I thought Pedro Neto was on fine form. Garnacho, even though he was frustrating the life out of the crowd by coming back inside the entire time, at least there was a glimmer of hope when he went on the outside and put a great fizzing ball across the 6-yard box. No one got on the end of it, but it was still a great move and much more like what we want to see from Garnacho. And then to follow that up, there was a secondary cross in the first half where he beats his man and he just stood one up to the back post. And again, no one got on the end of it, but they're both good crosses and both a bit unlucky that no one was there. But it was Pedro Neto that definitely caught the eye from the wingers, and he was the one that was getting in behind time and time again. And yeah, he was really on it today, Neto. It's just, I suppose what I really find hard when I watch Chelsea is they can put in performances like this and you kind of go, oh, do you know what? You're not a bad player after all. But you can't turn up once every 6 weeks. It's not really how it works. And I think where I have a real bugbear with players, and they would say this isn't the case, but it clearly was. They clearly down tools for that manager, Liam Rosenior. There was definitely a reluctance to run, a reluctance to do the right things. Pedro Neto could have gone past his player numerous times against Brighton the other night, and he decided not to. And it was almost like very interesting. You got a manager screaming at him. It was very, very vocal, and the audio was very clear. Take him on against Brighton, and Neto didn't do that once. Well, today he was in behind the fullback, probably I'd say half a dozen times in the first half, and then in the second half, obviously a couple of times as well. But yeah, it was a very good performance from the wingers, and I thought that given the stick they've had recently, I think they're worth a shout. I think man of the match definitely goes to João Pedro. His hold-up play and the way he was manhandling that back line from Leeds United was impressive. I thought that he was so good today. His first touch, when I've seen him live many times, but the boys haven't, and they were like, his first touch is so good. The way he controls things, and also the way he can control a ball, lay it off, and go for the return pass, as if like it's all one movement. It's truly remarkable to watch, and I thought he was outstanding. Why on earth he didn't shoot when we had that beautiful move? It honestly would have been goal of the season, without any doubt. There was I reckon there was about 8 or 9 passes, maybe even more than that, and they were one-touch flicks from the corners, and it was like Joga Bonito football. And the ball got laid into João Pedro, and you're just going, go on then, mate. Knock that in. That's goal of the season. And he dallied, and he waited, and the defender got back, and he had another chance to do it, and the defender got there again, and then it was like the chance is gone. It was like, oh man, what are you doing? Like, really disappointing. But I have to say, from that moment onwards, he didn't get his head down. He continued to work hard for the team. He continued to put himself in the right positions. And even though he didn't get on the score sheet today, he'll find himself desperate and lucky not to. Should have scored there. Obviously hit the post in the first half and stung the hand of the goalkeeper once or twice on other occasions. But yeah, he was just so good today. Enzo Fernandez, another one, captain for the day again. And I thought he was really good. I thought the way he was really tough in the tackle, didn't let people go around him. There was a couple of times, you don't always see this when you're watching it on TV, but he was almost blocking runs. If you watch the NFL, the American football, you see these pass rushers and they manage to stop the offensive players coming forward. Well, that was a bit like what Enzo was doing, and it was quite evident that he was trying to get himself in a very good defensive position from the outset and never getting caught the wrong side of the ball. And there was only one time that I can remember in the second half, this was, where the ball got played out to the left-hand side for Leeds United, and I forget the player who had the ball now, but he was going past Enzo, and Enzo couldn't keep up with him, and he just sort of holds onto his shirt, and he was sort of hold on to his coattails. He did eventually let go, but it was just goes to show you that Enzo's pace is not there at all, really. He has a bit, but once it's that sort of full tilt, he does tap out quite quickly, so he needed help from Gusto to get back and help him, which he did. But the way he moved the ball forward and his passes forward into feet and into space behind was fantastic. And when he doesn't play, we do miss that. And I think that is what we would miss if he was to leave the club. I don't think he will. I actually do think Enzo will stay, even though there's sort of been this link to Real Madrid or whatever. Unless there's a silly bid, I think Enzo might go. But failing that, I think that he will be here to stay for a few years. And if there is a manager that can come in and persuade him that this is the project, I shouldn't say project, this is the team for him, then I think that you never know. He could be here for a few more years yet. But I thought Enzo today was outstanding, and he took his goal so well. Great cross from Pedro Neto, and there he was arriving late. Great header down, and no goalkeeper in the world was going to save that. It was a brilliant goal, and it was our first goal we'd scored in 6 matches, and the boys and I went absolutely mad, and it was a really good moment. And I had Leo up on my shoulders at one point, and that was really nice. And yeah, he was really into it, and yeah, there's nothing like seeing a goal at Wembley live, and that end where Leeds were completely silent and the Chelsea fans going absolutely bonkers. It was quite a sight to behold. And when you've been starved of goals, I think that any goal you'll take, but it was such a lovely move and a lovely finish. It really was the icing on the cake for the day for me. I'll just rattle through a couple of other players before I pass over to Chris. I won't be too long on these, just to say that I thought that Malo Gusto was sort of good and bad in equal measure. He did some really good things and he did some really stupid things. One being in the first half, we had good high possession of the ball. We just made a tackle or an interception, and we could have got Pedro Neto up the field, and he passed it straight out for a throw into Leeds United. These are the mistakes that drive you mad, and the groans from the crowd were quite evident. And Gusto has certainly got a few haters out there. They're not all cheering for him, I have to say. He's not had a good few weeks or a good few months or even a good season, if we're being brutally honest. But he was sort of up and down like a yo-yo, and like I say, some good, some bad. I thought that Trev had a much better game. I thought Trev was very, very good today. I thought he marshalled Calvert-Lewin really, really well. He didn't really give him any sniff of a chance, to be quite honest with you. So, fair play to Trev. Tosin in the first half, again, when you watch him live, he's so slow. Oh my God, he's such a cart horse. I mean, it's like he's running in treacle. He really is. And even though he did an okay job today, he particularly in the second half was much better. When you watch him live, he can't pass for Toffee. He literally gives the ball away all the time. Unless he's passing sideways to Cucurella, any pass forward is terrible. And there was little patches of play, which again, you may have not picked up on TV because these things do go unnoticed. But he had the ball at the back and he passed it straight to Leeds. They kicked it straight back to him, and he continued to pass it straight back to Leeds again. And I was like, oh my goodness me. Obviously, the collision with Caicedo, he's the one that's coming on to the ball. He should be calling that and seeing for it. He goes down with a big knee and his big feet get stuck in the turf, and he ends up taking out Caicedo. And Leeds went through for a 1v1, which Robert Sanchez made, like I said earlier on. But look, overall, he did okay. But my goodness me, he is not the centre half that Chelsea require at this time in their life. He is pretty poor, if I'm honest with you. But I have to say, even in the second half, he did at least raise his game a little bit, and he was fairly decent in the back four today, so I'll give him some credit. Cucurella was really busy. I thought he had a very good game. He was up and down like a yo-yo. Again, his passing was really on point. There was a couple of times where you just think, don't get too caught up with the situation or the emotion of the game. And he does get a little bit carried away from time to time, get involved in things that are maybe a little bit unnecessary. But overall, I thought Cucurella was solid and, again, very worthy of maybe a 7.5, 8 out of 10. Caicedo and Lavia, very good in the midfield. Again, nothing to write home about. Did their job today. I'm not going to go overboard on those two. They did a decent job of defending our goal and obviously getting us on the attack when they could. But nothing more to be said other than a good game and well done. Good to see Caicedo back playing sort of somewhere near the level that we know he can do. Oh, and just quickly on Cucurella, I mean, we all saw the hair pull from Calvert-Lewin on him. Why wasn't that given as a red card? Literally 2 weeks ago, Calvert-Lewin got his hair pulled and it was actually barely anything. And Lautaro Martinez got a red card for that. But today, a huge chunk from Calvert-Lewin pulling Cucurella back by his hair, and it's waved on as if nothing's happened. The referees need to get themselves just on the same page, because it's absolute bullshit that they can't see that as a red card. It doesn't make any sense. And even though there were a few substitutions, I'm just going to mention Cole Palmer. He played on the right-hand side, which is where we were. And I don't know what's happened to this guy. Whether or not he is... We've said recently that he's over his injury and we think that maybe he's back to full fitness. But he looked terrible. He looked absolutely awful when he came on. Tried to go past someone at one point and didn't even have the legs to get around the fullback. I mean, he was really way behind. The decision was given as a goal kick. He then took the football, walked away, and then threw it 10 yards away. The referee then walked over, booked him. He then threw the ball back to where the goalkeeper was, who'd gone to collect another ball. And in some ways, that could have been a second yellow card, even though it would have been incredibly harsh. But for a player that had been on the field about 5 minutes, he came on, tried one dribble, didn't get round him. The decision didn't go his way, so he threw the ball away and got booked. And that was about as good as it got for Cole Palmer. And I just am worried that he's either going to go down the road of like a Mason Mount or one of these youngsters that's been played, and for some reason the love of the game maybe isn't quite there, or injuries are taking their toll just a little bit too much. Whatever it is, I don't know, but I can tell you now he's not playing well, and he doesn't look anywhere near getting in that England side for the World Cup. I just cannot see him going, although I'm sure Thomas Tuchel will take him because he's a magician. But I've got to say, Chris mentioned it the other day, he has not got pace at all. So playing him on the wing, which is all we had to today because we didn't have any other wingers apart from Garnacho and Neto, he looked like a fish out of water. I didn't enjoy him there. He does his best work just on the inside there, behind João Pedro or linking up with João Pedro, but he was too far away and having to do things on his own. And yeah, he got quite exposed, I thought. And I didn't think Cole Palmer was good at all. And food for thought and a penny for his thoughts as to how the season is sort of going and what decisions he might make at the end of the season if Chelsea don't finish in the top, let's just say 5, which, let's be frank, is very, very unlikely at this stage. But I'll leave it on this and just say Chelsea have given me nothing but fantastic memories over the years with my family, with my friends. That will never change. As you get older and you become a parent and you can take your children to Wembley or take your children to Stamford Bridge or something like that, it is a special moment. It shouldn't be overlooked or made to feel like it's normal, because it's not. And those occasions only come up every so often. And that performance today has given me a little bit of life, a little bit of juice inside myself to kind of go, come on, let's see the season out. Hopefully, we can get a win or two here and there, and it might be, it won't feel quite so bad, particularly if they get a good manager in, and that might sort of make everybody feel a little bit more positive about the season ahead next year. So yeah, it was a good performance today. Let's not get too carried away. It was a good performance and nothing more than that. But I thought the boys carried themselves well. They've got themselves into another FA Cup final. They've beaten the dirty bastard Leeds, and we await Man City in the final in a few weeks' time. And who'd have thought that Chelsea might be the team to stop Man City potentially winning the treble after Arsenal were most definitely going to win the quadruple at one stage. So funny how football changes around. But anyway, I'll leave it there, guys. And Chris, it's over to you.
I told you Enzo Fernandez was crap, didn't I? As I record this on a glorious, glorious Monday morning in London, the sun is shining, and it feels so good to do this podcast talking about some positives at Chelsea again. It has felt like ages. And to be fair, it's been tougher and tougher to come on here after games and talk about anything good, because it has all been bad. But yesterday was much, much more like it, wasn't it? And Chelsea showed we can still have a bit about us, and maybe we can still salvage this season and turn it into something half decent. Got to talk about Enzo. On the last pod, as I alluded to, had sort of started to suggest that maybe it was time for Chelsea to talk about considering offers for him in the summer. And he still is a bit of an enigma for me, Enzo, as a player. I don't like that the fact he hasn't bothered to learn English and is captain of the team. It just doesn't quite sit right with me, that. And sometimes he frustrates me as a player. I sometimes think he could do so much more, and are you physically imposing enough for this league to be, our midfield general and all these kind of things. But that's 14 goals for the season for him now. I think 9 assists on top of that. He's a sort of player that could very easily mature into being a 20 goal a season midfielder. And there are not many of them in world football anywhere right now. And fair play to him. You can see that has improved year on year since he joined the club. He's become really adept, hasn't he, of sniffing out chances in the box. He wears Frank Lampard's number 8 shirt. I'm not going to compare him to Frank in that, but there's little moments about timing in the box which Lampard was so good at, and Enzo seems to have developed that lovely trait of just knowing when to arrive in the box to get on the end of crosses. Obviously the header, it was a really good header as well, let's face it. It was a great ball from Neto, but a really good header. Buried it. Did it obviously in Callum McFarlane's first game as an interim back in at Man City right in the last minute. Just being in the right places gets all sorts of scruffy goals. And to be honest, there really isn't anyone else in the Chelsea squad who does that. So he is integral to that. And I flip-flop on him. Honestly, I'm flip-flopping right now on the pod from do you cash in or do you build around him, because he's going to be bloody hard to replace those goals next season if you were to cash in. But fair play to Enzo, hold my hands up. Absolutely key goal at the right time. He did it, didn't he, in the final of the Conference League last year at Real Betis as well. We're 1-0 down with 20 minutes to go. Palmer puts in a brilliant ball, but it was a fantastic header down into the corner that got Chelsea level on the night, and we never really looked back from that point. So he does have a knack for turning up when it matters, and that is an incredibly important trait. And to do it at Wembley, a place where Chelsea were desperate for any kind of win, was massive. So yeah, Enzo, I don't know. I don't know. In terms of Chelsea in general, Joe mentioned it there. I think it has to be commented on, which is the players just downed tools, didn't they? Completely under Liam Rosenior. I was sort of thinking about this morning, thinking part of me wants to really chew out the players for this and say they're the whole squad an absolute disgrace. But part of me also is like, that would be a bit churlish, because we've seen Chelsea squads and teams of our greatest eras do exactly the same. And I mean the likes of Terry, Lampard, Drogba era, who definitely under Andre Villas-Boas did very similar. Didn't want to play for the manager anymore. Clearly didn't like him. Not quite Liam Rosenior levels, but clearly felt he was an assistant. He'd been assistant to Jose and was kind of coming back being the big one. They didn't like it. Down tools. He leaves. Di Matteo comes in, does the perfect interim job, really. And obviously Chelsea go and win the Champions League and FA Cup that year. Shows how good the players could be. Go back to another brilliant Chelsea era of Hazard, Costa, Cesc Fabregas, and that very difficult third season under Mourinho, where obviously we are just off winning the league, being incredible, and we are facing, I think, 16th or 15th in the league when Jose was sacked just before Christmas. Again, it looked like the players from Hazard, and I'm talking about Hazard and Lampard here, like my two absolute favourite Chelsea players of all time, had clearly stopped playing for that manager. He left, and again, Chelsea regrouped next season under Antonio Conte, win the league again. So we've seen it with squads of the past. I don't want to be so hypocritical to slag off every single one of these Chelsea players for doing the same. What is clear is they didn't like Rosinia for whatever reason and had stopped playing for him. Flipping to the positives, I think what was positive about Chelsea yesterday was the grit and determination and a bit of shithousery and everything about the display that you need to do to win big games. You need to do it at this point to get over the line in seasons. And you know what? How far away from a 1-0 win have we looked? I think we got one clean sheet. Did we? Maybe two in the whole reign of Liam Rosinia. And both of those were very early on in his reign. It was really good to see us actually have a bit of bite about us and look like we would do anything we could to keep the ball out of the net. And it was kind of reminiscent actually to the sort of displays we saw quite a lot this time last season, where we got over the line in the league, in the Champions League, by grinding out a number of 1-0 wins, home to Everton, home to Man United, away at Forest on the last day of the season, all 1-0 wins that got Chelsea over the line. And maybe he's only got 5 more games, hasn't he, McFarlane in charge. Maybe he can do something similar and we can really salvage this season, because elsewhere in the Premier League, actually, the results went really well for us with basically, again, I'll sort of repeat the details because I think it's very confusing, but we basically need Villa to finish 5th and to win the Europa League, of which they are strong favourites. They have to finish 5th. So them finishing 4th doesn't help us. The Champions League only gets pushed down to 6th place if Villa finish 5th. Obviously, them losing and Liverpool winning is good news. They are in 5th now. If it stays that way, Villa won't finish lower than that. I think that's pretty much guaranteed. Then 6th place is up for grabs. Chelsea got 4 games left. I think if you win 3 of them, grind out those 1-0 win type performances, you probably get it. And that felt impossible, didn't it, a week ago? I think we'd all resigned ourselves to probably a mid-table finish. But it just showed, I think, yesterday that there is, when the players want to, they can grind out performances. And if we can stop shipping goals, you think we'll always create chances. We just need a few of these players to start stepping up and taking them. On the attack, I think I've got to go there. João Pedro, Joe said it, he was absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. If we are to do what I just said, he'll be integral to that. I thought Garnacho was really frustrating. But Chelsea don't have many choices at the moment because, as Joe said, I don't think Palmer looks right. That exactly that moment when he took on the player I was almost a bit embarrassed for him. And I think he was a bit embarrassed, which is why he reacted so badly. But you probably at the moment, if you're McFarlane, you're not mucking around too much with the idea of Enzo plays at the number 10. And then it's going to be either Lavia, who I thought did all right, or Santos alongside Caicedo. I just imagine that gives you a structure that's a bit more solid. So Palmer's going to have to accept, I think, for the rest of this season that he's going to be one of the wide options alongside Neto and Garnacho. And then obviously, clearly, João Pedro is your main man up front. And Joe talks about the England squad there. Obviously, Esteval, for the really sad reasons, won't be going with Brazil. I really hope that Thomas Tuchel doesn't take Palmer to the World Cup. And I know it would be heartbreaking for Palmer himself, but I think that guy needs a summer off to get his head right, to get his body right. Maybe realise that he needs to be a bit more humble, needs to work on his game, get back to the really hard-working Cole Palmer that we saw early on, and get a bit by his teeth and come back next season and show the world what a good player he can be. Because I just don't think we've seen it consistently for, I've said it before, maybe 18 months plus. It's been that long since we saw a consistent top-performing Cole Palmer that we all know and love. I looked at a few of the numbers from the game against Leeds, and I thought what really stood out, actually, and Jay mentioned it going a bit more direct, it really comes out in the numbers. So we've talked a number of times about the number of passes the centre-halves have at Chelsea, and actually the centre midfielders. On many a game under Maresca and Rosinia, those guys will average over 100 passes per game. And it doesn't matter who's playing, it's 100 passes. And very normally they'll have 105 passes, 102 and complete virtually all of them. So over 100 passes each. Notably, none of them had over 60 passes yesterday. So I'm talking about the centre-backs there, and Caicedo and Lavia only had about 30. It was really low. And it just showed that Chelsea were a lot more direct. Much more direct from goal kicks, much more direct from when Sanchez had the ball at his feet. And it worked. And I really like to see that from McFarlane, just being a little bit more pragmatic. Let's go and fight with the ball in the right places. Let's not give away silly goals, silly chances. And as we've said many times, Chelsea have probably put in their best performances in the last 2 years. I won't say 2 years, maybe 5 years, have been against Paris Saint-Germain, obviously in the Club World Cup final, and Barcelona earlier this season in the Champions League. Clearly two of the best teams in Europe. What happened in both of those games? Chelsea went incredibly direct. We went direct from the back. We pushed up the pitch. We were really fast on the counter. We used pace in behind of the likes of Neto and Garnacho at different times. Estevao, of course, against Barcelona, and they couldn't cope with it. And it's that kind of bluster approach. It's like, well, do you know what? The reason Chelsea fans also love that so much, not just because we won the games and we're brilliant, but actually it's the sort of football that a lot of us have grown up with and like. We're not a fan base who wants or even enjoys a very slow, pragmatic approach. Your Pep ball of old age, that kind of thing. Maybe a Wenger's Arsenal. Actually, we quite like a bit of up and at 'em. We quite like a bit of let's make ourselves difficult to beat and be the anti-hero, if you like. And I think you're smart to play into that strength. And it worked for us yesterday. And if we continue that for the rest of the season, clearly each game will have its own game plan. Home to Forest next will be a different sort of game, clearly. Forest have turned into reincarnation of Brazil 1970 by the looks of it at the moment. So it's not going to be an easy game playing them at all. Of course not. But Chelsea would be wise to kind of learn from what worked so well against Leeds and go back to basics, I think. The other final thought I'll have before I hand it back to Joe has got to be still on the manager thing. I think McFarlane came across really well, didn't he, in for people who've seen the post-match interviews. He did a really good interview on the pitch, actually, with Steven Gerrard and a couple of others. And I thought he came across really open and honest. He's clearly not, he's quite humble. He clearly knows that he's just here for a few weeks. He's just doing his best job that he can. He seems to come across, he knows he's like lucky to be in the position he is, but just comes across very, very honest is the word I'd use. And clearly the players have responded to that. I think there was an element of just relieved to have got rid of Rosini because they clearly, as I said at the start, didn't want to play for him anymore. And Joe and I in the last pod talked about the manager shortlist. Worth listening back to that if you haven't already. I'm really torn still on who Chelsea should go for. I think the fact that they're going to take their time, I think, is very wise and very sensible. I watched that yesterday and thought, do you know what? The most important thing with this manager choice is finding someone. I know it's easier said than done, but finding someone who the players are going to respect and listen to, because I think we saw very clearly under the Rosania reign, if the players and squad don't respect the manager, it all falls apart. And it did make me lean once again towards the second favourite for the manager job, which is Cesc Fabregas. I know it's probably too soon for him. And I know he's young, he's inexperienced, he's only ever managed Como. But I don't know, I just have more of a feeling for him. And Iraola is the favourite. I just worry with Iraola. Does he lack the name? And if it starts to go wrong, does he become a little bit like a Maresca or a Rosina again, where it just like he hasn't got the connection with the fans, so we won't have that to fall back on. But he hasn't got that real big name about him that the players would look to and go, okay, I have to listen to him. Whereas with Fabregas, he can point to his trophy collection for Spain, for Chelsea, for Barcelona, can show his caps, he can show the medals he's won, and he can go to the likes of Enzo Fernandez, this is how you play. This is how you play football. And the Chelsea fans, I saw a couple of clips together, and I think fans will be split on this, probably like me and Joe are and many others listening are. But there was a fair few songs for Fabregas's Magic around the ground yesterday. He'd be a very popular choice. He'd certainly get the fans on side with the decision. He'd have them on board more than any other manager right now. I think there's strongly links. Again, we don't think Lampard will probably be considered at this point. Oh, I am leaning that way. I know it's the romantic choice, but I am leaning that way, I have to say. I'll hand back to Joe there, but finish by saying, isn't it good for Chelsea to win again? Didn't you just wake up this morning just feeling better about life with a Chelsea win? And do you know what? The fact that we haven't got to play until for about another week, as I record, another 7 days, kind of nice, isn't it? We just sit on the win, don't have to worry about anything else once the other teams play, and we can just hope that it gives us time to get players fit and keep the momentum going.
Chris, I can confirm there were more than just a few chants of Fabregas' magic. He wears a magic hat. That chant went round several times and was pretty deafening at one stage. And for a moment, I was thinking, okay, yeah, ex-Chelsea player and all the rest of it. You know, I can understand that in trying to wind up the other opposition fans. And then I suddenly remembered we didn't have a manager, and I was like, oh God. But in that split second, I was a bit like, oh, got caught up in the emotion of it, and then went, oh, we're probably singing because we won with manager. So it kind of made me laugh afterwards. Chris, I don't know if you've seen this today, but the Como owner has come out and said that he would not stand in the way of Cesc Fabregas moving to Chelsea or moving to any club that took his fancy, but basically said that he understands that Como basically are a bit of a stepping stone for Fabregas and his future. So Cesc himself, as you can imagine, has come out in defence of that and said that's a lovely gesture from the owner, but my job is here at Como and I want to kind of see out my contract. I don't know if that is just words. I think it probably is in some cases, but it certainly gave the idea that if the owner is willing to let his star manager go, then it certainly opens a door for Chelsea to come and slip in if they really want to. I have to say, I hadn't seen a lot of him, but there have been a few videos circulating of late of his halftime team talks and end of match team talks. And to say that he rattles a few cages is the understatement. He goes absolutely ballistic at times. And I sort of thought after our manager chat, which we had on, I think it was Thursday or Friday last week, I was thinking to myself, do you know what? I don't mind that. I don't mind. I assumed that Cesc would be quite calm and quite measured in some ways, but in actual fact, he was really giving the players hell. And I mean really giving them hell. And I thought, that's the sort of guy that I would like to see at our football club. Now, I've mentioned, I think the other day, that I think the overriding favourite does seem to be Iraola. And I still don't think it's a terrible choice, purely because of the state we're in. And we can't really attract the kind of guy that we would like. And Chris said after our last chat that he's a bit of a football romantic and he could see Cesc coming in and kind of maybe working wonders. Look, we don't know. Anyone can come in and do a good job, bad job. There's no kind of recipe, as we've seen with all these managers in the past. That, you know, some guys work, some guys don't. But I have to say, I did lean on the idea of if Cesc Fabregas was our manager, I would really enjoy our season. I think, ups and downs. I think you could be a bit like Chris just said there. He's got every trophy in the book. He can literally say, "Here's my medal. They're on the table." And if you're going to find some kind of positive in him being a manager, I think that Enzo Fernandez can learn from one of the very best. And I think also players like Caicedo as well can learn from a role that Fabregas played so well, dropping deep and playing those fantastic long passes over the top. And also, if you remember, like the assist that he gave Andre Schürrle against Burnley, those little deft little passes, he had every single pass in the book. So to say that he couldn't teach, like I say, Caicedo, Enzo or Andre Santos a thing or two would be the understatement of the century. So the idea of him does give me a kind of a happy heart. So let's watch this space in terms of what's going to happen there. As for the team and Liam Rosenior, it was very stark and very obvious to see that there was no messages of goodbye, no messages of good luck and thank you. The players have almost voted with their voices on their social media account. The silence was deafening, as they say. It does make you think that he really wasn't, I don't want to say well liked. I'm sure, like most people, they will say that he was probably a nice guy and all the rest of it, but for some reason, nothing seemed to click. And even though João Pedro's performances did go up, I think we gave Liam Rosina a lot of credit for that, and I think that maybe that is still the case. But it could just be that João Pedro is a bloody good player. He got his act together. He may have said to him privately, get yourself in the box a bit more. That may well have been a thing, but I think for the most part, everybody got worse. The systems got worse. Tactics got very confused, and essentially Chelsea just started shipping goals hand over fist. And yeah, it was a very, very, very poor look for some of them. And I just think that the idea that they never even said goodbye or thank you on social media, even one or two players, even Reece, the captain, not coming out. That one you'd expect, but unfortunately, he didn't get that send off. As for Callum McFarlane, Chris is right. I thought I came home and I saw the interview with Steven Gerrard on the TV there, and I think he was very, very good. I think he was very honest, very open, and I think he handled the media a lot better this time around than he did the first time around. He looked a little bit nervous, which is obviously understandable. What I did like was when he said at the very beginning, he played on the fact that he knew that Leeds would think that they were a wounded animal. I think he said, and that basically we needed to come out 100 miles an hour and push them back because he thought they would come at us in the same way. Said that he didn't want the team to be messing around at the back too much, and so they kind of duped Leeds into thinking they were going to play short passes after short pass at the back, and then they'd play one or two passes, and then they would look to get Pedro Neto in behind, and they did that time and time again yesterday, and it was quite evident that they were looking to get him on the counter-attack. I thought that Garnacho, even though Chris is right, he was a bit frustrating, and he was frustrating people in the crowd. What I would say is, though, on those one-off games like that, in those semi-finals, I think a lot of stuff goes out the window because you just know, weirdly, I know you're playing for a cup final position, but it's almost like you sort of hit the reset button slightly. And even though he was coming inside a couple of times and the fans were getting very, very pissed off at that, then when he did go on the outside and go past a player, it was like, bloody hell, he can do it. What a great cross that was. And then he did it again a bit later on, like I said in my voice note yesterday. And you kind of go, that's maybe just the little reminder that he needs that, do you know what, if you do go past a player and put a ball in the box, even if we don't get on the end of it, it gives the fullback something else to think about. And what I would say is that right back went off at half time. He was getting a bit of a hammering from Garnacho, even though he was frustrating us. So let's just bear that in mind, even though Garnacho did, and I didn't say it in the last podcast, but Garnacho had one of the worst performances I've ever seen in a blue shirt against Brighton. It was woeful, like absolutely woeful. But I thought, do you know what? It was like kicking a puppy having a go at him on that night. So I sort of steered away from it. As for Clearlake and our ownership, I think it was quite nice as a fan base that the Clearlake or the anti-Clearlake songs were few and far between yesterday. Now, I'm not saying that fans shouldn't sing that. I'm not saying the fans shouldn't, vote with their voices or anything like that. But I think when it is a semi-final or a cup final, I think the last thing you need really is a protest on that day. I think the players feel that. I think that if there had been a negative attitude or sentiment in the crowd, it does rub off on the players. So I think just for yesterday and hopefully in the final against Man City, we can sing about Cesc Fabregas, we can sing about Frank Lampard, we can sing about we can sing Carefree and all the songs that we go through, our whole repertoire, and we have a lot of songs. My son said to me yesterday, we've got so many songs, and it was really funny because he started joining in on some of them, and I was like, no, not this bit, you can't say this bit, which he laughed at. But I think it was just quite evident that those chants were few and far between. But it was quite funny watching Egbali having to sit next to Thomas Tuchel, the man that he sacked just a few short years ago. So that was quite funny. And I think I'll just weigh in the Cole Palmer thing. For now, I honestly think his last meaningful game for Chelsea was probably Bayern Munich away in the Champions League. I don't think he's had a good game since then. I thought that night he was wonderful. I thought that was the Cole Palmer we we were seeing under Pochettino and the early sort of days of Enzo Maresca. I really do believe he's dropped off that far. There may be one that I can't remember, but sitting here now trying to go through the games, and I'm talking about not Cole Palmer scoring the odd goal or Cole Palmer doing the odd good pass. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying when he took control of a game of football and drove Chelsea forward and made Bayern Munich go, fuck, who's this guy, sort of thing. He's literally taken the mickey out of us. That's what I'm talking about. And seeing him in this run of form is really concerning me, because we've had players like this before. Mason Mount burst onto the scene and he was unplayable at times. Slightly different player to Cole Palmer, of course. But Mason Mount would do all these wonderful things with the ball. He'd pop up with goals. He'd create assists. He'd make wonderful tackles. Cole Palmer isn't that. Cole Palmer sort of is much more on the offensive side of the ball. And that's where I'd like to see him remain. I don't really want to see Cole Palmer tracking back. Eden Hazard was never someone that did that for Chelsea. I think you can sacrifice someone when they are that good. And at the moment, I just feel as though he's thinking about too much. He's definitely frustrated. He's definitely not really happy. I think you can see that in his game. That punching the ball away for a yellow card yesterday for dissent was just so bad. He had only been on the field a matter of minutes and then did that. Yeah, he is worrying me slightly. I think what Chris is saying from a physical standpoint, by not going to the World Cup, I think would be brilliant for Chelsea. I think mentally, I don't think he would cope with that very well. I think he looks the sort of player to me that would maybe get in his own head about that sort of stuff and sort of be like, oh, maybe I'm not as good as I think, or maybe the manager doesn't like me, or maybe this or maybe that. And I just feel like he needs to go purely to get away from Chelsea and find some form. I feel as though he's so much in a bubble at the moment that he can't get out of his own mind, and he's playing that way. I think he just needs to go completely away, tell the world once again how good he is, and even if that does maybe hamper him from like a physical standpoint, I think that for his own mind and own stability, I think not going would harm him even more. That would be my personal opinion on him. But I've got to say at the moment, he has been absolutely rubbish. I don't like saying that. I really don't. But I think it's well worth calling out, because we all cheered. I think everyone was like, oh, yes, Palmer's coming on. My sons were like, oh, yes, Palmer's coming on. And it was a bit like, oh, could Palmer go off again now? Because he's worse than what was here already. So, yeah, I'm being a bit mean on him, but it has to be said, if you're going to call players out for being poor, you have to call out everybody when they're being poor, not just the ones that you like and the ones you don't like. I'll leave the pod this week just to say I have no expectations on Chelsea's remaining games. I had no expectation under Liam Rosenior. I felt as though, well, the expectation was that I thought we were going to lose every week, and that's the honest truth. I didn't see us getting out of it. At least now there is some glimmer of hope, but I still think it's too far. I think we've left it way too late. Roland was on a WhatsApp group yesterday and he made a very good point this morning. He just sort of said something along the lines of, if you try hard and apply yourself just a little bit, it's amazing how many sort of games and points you can pick up just by sort of being... He didn't say these words exactly like being average, but kind of, I knew what he was getting at. Just basically, if you try hard and you actually try and at least stay in games and don't give silly, cheap goals away, Chelsea would have had probably 15 or 20 more points this season. That would be enough for probably third place or something silly. So, yeah, it's mad how many points we've dropped. It's mad how many games we've lost and drawn and basically chucked results away at the last minute here and there. So it's been a very disappointing campaign so far, but let's hope we can finish with a positive. And if we can win some of our remaining games, and I think at the very least get in the Europa League, I think that has to be the goal. It has to be the goal. Then we can look forward to a Wembley date, even though the season's been a real shit show at times. If we can go to Wembley and cause Man City an upset, then it will be a very good way to finish. But there's a huge way to go on that front, and I hope that Chelsea can at least have no more injuries, because at the moment they're racking up at quite the rate. So yeah, I'll leave it there, Chris. Over to you, mate, and let's hope we can get a good result at the weekend.
Very short one, I think, for me to finish us up today. I didn't even really talk about the actual cup final, the fact that we're playing Man City in much detail, but let's put it this way. Chelsea have the opportunity still this season to potentially, in the same week, win the FA Cup, relegate Spurs, and somehow sneak our way into the Champions League, it's still all up for grabs with about 3 weeks of the season left, which is pretty incredible. I mean, it would be kind of very Chelsea, wouldn't it? With all the turmoil and everything that's gone wrong this year, for Chelsea to do something like that would be quite Chelsea. So who knows? And the other thing that jumped out is I saw this stat blew my mind a little bit, but Chelsea, we've always known how good we've been in the FA Cup, really. And there was an era where we felt like we won it for so many years in a row in kind of the later part of the 2000s. And stat came out today that Chelsea, it was the most FA Cup final appearances since the turn of the millennium. Chelsea have been in 12 finals since the year 2000. The next closest is Arsenal on 8. It's basically every other FA Cup final this century, Chelsea have been in it. The number we've got to put right, though, and this is damning, we've only won 5 so far. Compare that to Arsenal, who are second. They've won 7 out of the 8 that they've been in, unfortunately beating us in a couple of those. And Man City are number 3, 7 appearances in finals. Only 3 actual FA Cup wins, though, in those 7 finals. So who knows? It's a one-off game. I mean, Pep's going to be desperate for it, obviously, but not their biggest. It will be able to week before the end of the season this year. They'll still be, you'd have thought, very much focused on the title race, which you never know, might play in Chelsea's favour. And a one-off game at Wembley, who knows? Miracles can happen, and Chelsea will probably need one on that day. We'll finish there. Great to hear from Joe, and what a great time we had with the boys. And as he said, let's face it, that is what it's all about. That's why we love this game so much. I'll finish with the final word. You know what, guys? Maybe every little thing will be all right. We'll see you next time.
Leo, out of all the players today, who are you most keen on seeing play and why?
João Pedro, because he's got great feet and he can beat the defender and shit.
Max, are you looking forward to the atmosphere and going down Wembley way?
Yeah, the atmosphere at Wembley is always great, apart from that England game a little bit ago. But hopefully it'll be great. Can't wait to see it and hoping for a good game.
And Max, if I had to push you for a prediction today and maybe a goal scorer, what do you think it might be?
I'd say either 2-1 to Chelsea, and I hope João Pedro scores either 1 or 2, which would help my fantasy team out.
And Leo, if I was to ask you for a score prediction, what do you think it might be?
I'm going to go for a 2-0 win.
Those were the Chelsea notes for this week. If you enjoyed the podcast, do us a favour and share it with a fellow Blue. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a review wherever you're listening. Wherever you may be, stay carefree, and remember, every little thing's gonna be alright.